All right, as we see to the left of this slide, we see percentages. Now, what do you think these percentages could mean if we're talking about intercultural communication within interpersonal communication? Well, if you guessed that that percentage resembles the percentage of different ethnicities that are just in our Inland Empire local area, then you'd be correct. In fact, this is the percentage breakdown of the diversity at a local four-year college that might very well be a college that you would attend after being at the school we are in now. What's important is the 63%, 13%, 7%, 5%, 5%, it's broken down by ethnicities, but we're talking a lot more than just as ethnicity when we're talking about culture or intercultural. In this example, 63% represents Mexican immigrants or Mexican background, 13% white, 7% black, 5% Asian, and 5% other. Now, it's important because this makeup, this diversity, is what we live with. It's what we find in Southern California. It's what we are blessed with as far as just having the opportunity to interact and communicate with others from other cultures. And so I think that's a very awesome thing. So when we're talking about culture, what do you think culture is? You can read what culture is here, but think about culture. Culture is just, it's a collection, a group of people who speak the same language, they have similar values, beliefs, thoughts, experiences, the things that they grew up with and they kind of understand now because they are part of that culture. There's customs, there's holidays, there's all types of things that create a culture. Right? Now, in our class, we also, I want you to consider a co-culture. A co-culture is a smaller, more condensed culture in our life. So let me see if I can kind of make this make sense a little bit. So let's say this little box right here that I'm drawing is all culture, right? This is, let's call this American culture. Well, within this American culture, we also have, let me make this a little bigger. Let me move myself here. Now, in this box, we have an opportunity to all of us belonging to the culture, the overall culture. But within this little culture, there's little subcultures or co-cultures. So this could be college student, it could be sibling, it could be religious affiliation, it could be hip hop culture, it could be whatever culture that we decide we would like to be a part of. And each of these little cultures that are within the bigger overall broad umbrella of American culture is considered or defined as a co-culture. So as we're thinking about co-cultures, I want you to think about how vast and wide this could be. It could be LGBTQ, it could be hip hop, it could be religion, it could be hobbies, it could be sports fans, it could be, I mean, the list goes on. But what's important is, do the members share the values and culture, the values and customs and language that's found in the big thing, as well as finding a smaller group of people who share unique and at the same time valuable beliefs, customs, language, culture, you know, the things that make that group awesome, right? An enclave. An enclave is an area where it's usually ethnically centered. The ethnic culture moves to a dominant area, and so think Chinatowns or little Little Saigon in Westminster. Right? These are enclaves of another culture, another group that has come together and has kind of kept their culture pretty similar to what culture was in Vietnam. And now they're sharing the co-culture within the larger culture. So now that we know what culture is, what is intercultural communication? Well, intercultural is when two or more people that have different backgrounds interact. Now, this interaction should be and is important and significant, right? Each member in this conversation relies on the other person to be influenced, and the perceptions of each of them are different, they're unique. And so coming together with these different ways of communicating and these different symbols of meaning things, that meaningful connection of speaking and interacting, that is intercultural communication. It's not intercultural communication when I go to a Chinese restaurant or something and the owners don't speak English. And I'm trying to order something and we figure it out and I order my food and I say thank you and we go. That's not intercultural communication. That is communicating across cultures, but there's no real significant like influence that's happening in that moment. I'm practically via practicality, I'm just trying to get something done. The owner is just trying to get something done. The two of us are meeting in the middle, making something happen so that we can just carry on and do our thing. We are not influenced by each other's cultural perceptions. So, what we're talking about is phatic communication. Phatic communication is that small communication that you have in the elevator sometimes when you're speaking with somebody and you're connecting for the quick 30 seconds. You say hello, you say hi. You know, it's the things we do every day as we go through our life. That's phatic communication. And so in intercultural communication, we are looking for our communication to be significant with each other, influenced by different cultural perceptions, okay, and symbol systems. So standpoint theory. Standpoint theory is it's a theory. It claims that social groups within a culture are distinctly shaped members' perceptions, identities, expectations, knowledge, and so forth. Now, this is often influenced by political power dynamics, right? Standpoint is political awareness of the power dynamics involved in a particular community. You can read more about this on page 154. And how does this, what does this look like? Well, this is a pretty difficult concept on its face, but let's say you are a owner of a big company, and so you're up here, whatever this may be, right? But that's you, and I'm sorry I'm not a great artist, but this is you. We'll even give you a little smile. Right, so this is you, and down here you are seeing all of your workers in the warehouse working and contributing to the daily life of whatever your business is, right? Now, this is business and not politically related, but hopefully this will give you the idea. Let's say this group of people down here, the workers, they want to get paid more, rightfully so. So they are protesting or demanding more work or better working conditions or whatever the case is. They have a perspective from this lower level in the company that this owner is not going to have, because this owner is in a higher vantage point. And so the perspectives of the two are different. This group down here is looking up. This CEO is looking down. Now, not down on people, but the perspectives change. And what standpoint theory is basically saying is that this person who is in a higher class, a higher hierarchy in society, right, does not have the same perception and understanding of things that are going on with this lower level hierarchical group. Therefore, this group may see things that this person does not. And that is what we're talking about with standpoint theory, right? And yes, it's usually politically influenced. It is about the inequality or inequity that is seen in social issues. There's power dynamics, but hopefully this kind of helps you understand that a little bit more. So when we are talking about intercultural communication, and we're talking about the co-cultures, we want to be sure that we understand the difference in in-groups and out-groups. Now, in-groups are just groups that you belong to through your identification. You identify as this group of people, and these are your people that you hang out with all the time. This is your in-group. The out-group is any group that you don't interact with and connect with. It is not saying that the in-group is better than the out-group. It's just saying that the in-group is the group that I find myself in most often, and the out-group are the groups that I don't find myself in often. For example, I have an in-group of veterans. I'm a veteran. Not everybody's a veteran. I am part of the group that claims to be a veteran, right? We are veterans. People who are not veterans are considered the out group in this situation. Now, cultural membership does impact and affect everybody's, let's see here, I want to go over here. Okay, so I can't. So, sorry, I'm trying to figure this out. So our culture kind of contributes, like whatever culture we belong to, whatever culture we're a member of, that contributes to who we are, our social identity, right? We kind of understand more about who we are based off of our surroundings and who's in there. Now, we talked about co-cultures, age, race, sexual orientation, sexual preference, nationality, geographical region. You know, people from the South are different from the North, and so on. Well, I want you to consider genders, right? So when we're growing up and in Western culture, when we grow up, we tend to have delineation between the activities that boys and girls play. And this contributes to the way that we, I guess, understand the world around us. Now, boys and girls play differently. So boys are used to playing games like baseball, tag, football, something like that, where the games involve more people. There are really clear rules, and there's specific communication patterns. Take football, for example, right? A group of people, the more, the better. When you're playing like, you know, young little kid football, right? There's clear rules. You know the rules. I say hi, you give me the ball, I throw the ball, you try and, you know, You try to get open, I try to throw the ball to you, or I'll give it to somebody, they run the ball, or whatever the case is. We know the rules, right? And the specific communication can come in areas like, hey, I'm open, pass me the ball, right? Or maybe you're playing tag. Tag, you're it, right? So the communication is simple, brief, and to the point. Now, girls tend to play house and school and tea party and different things like this, where there's fewer players, but it actually requires talking. It actually requires communication to each other. There are no clear rules, so they have to talk it out and work it out and figure out what's the best thing, what's the best approach, right? They depend on the cooperation of each other, and they put themselves in a position where they care about the other person and the input that they have. Now, these two different styles of communication from when we're younger, they carry on with us through our life. They carry on as we grow older. And so now you'll hear the words or the statement, men are from Venus, women are from Mars, or something like that. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And that's just kind of like, well, one, it's a book, but it's like a statement that kind of shows how different we can be based on the communication patterns that we grew up with in our culture, in our Western culture. Okay, so this is some important stuff as far as what I want you to know about other cultures. Other cultures, in this instance, we are talking about world cultural differences and what can be learned from those. So Garrett Hofstede, or Garrett Hofstadter, that's how you say this name. It's weird, but that is how you say it. A psychologist. He worked for big companies like IBM, got hired on to work for IBM and figure out how the IBM can take its business model across the world and what is noticed with personnel. And through his studying and through his time at IBM, he learned, as he started studying the workers and the workers' habits in different areas and cultures, he was able to pinpoint different things with pretty close accuracy about how these people were raised or influenced by the culture that they were raised by. And the 6 dimensions are listed right here, and we'll go into them. The very first one is individualism and collectivism. And individualism and collectivism is one of the most important dichotomies that there is. So a person from an individualistic culture is more concerned with themselves than the group of people. And so this connection, individualism and collectivism, is referring to the manner or the extent how members of the culture understand themselves as either part of a family, or connected to their family, their groups, or their cultures. The collectivistic culture, they feel interdependent as part of the group. These groups, if somebody from a collectivistic family or orientation culturally, it's called cultural dimension, right? So a person from an individualistic cultural dimension area will graduate high school and not think that they did the graduation by themselves, but they will think that the graduation, the diploma that they are receiving, is part of everybody's diploma. Everybody helped me get to this point. I did this, I succeeded, I was successful because I wanted the group to be successful. Right now, that's just one example of that taking place. But individualism is the opposite. If somebody from an individualistic cultural dimension graduates high school, they are proud of themselves and look at what I achieved. I did this. I am awesome. It was my hard work that got me here. And it's okay. The individual can be celebrated. All right. So collectivistic, the group is important. Individualistic, the self is important. And one thing to be cautious of is none of these cultural dimensions means one thing is better than the other. It's just how the culture is. Right? So collectivistic cultures can be found in places like China, Pakistan, Japan, things like that. And individualistic cultures, US, Australia, UK, those type places. So the next cultural dimension is uncertainty avoidance. What is the extent that people avoid uncertain actions or vagueness in speaking or whatever? So if a culture is low in the uncertainty avoidance, these people are very comfortable with uncertain and ambiguous situations. They aren't so concerned about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week, and they're just kind of rolling with the. They don't need plans. They don't need notes. They don't need to pick, whatever. They prefer less rules. High uncertainty avoidance, meaning that you are highly likely to avoid those uncertain terms, times, whatever you want to call it. They're uncomfortable with uncertain and ambiguous situations. They prefer the more rigid rules. They prefer those guidelines. Low uncertainty avoidance, Denmark, US, Hong Kong. High UA, Belgium, Greece, Japan, and others. These are just examples. All right, power distance. This is the amount of comfort that people have in a culture with power. Usually you'll find a high power distance culture that is okay with that separation in power. There is a power position and there's a less powerful position, and the two are okay. It's okay to have that distance. Right? Low power distance, there's an even distribution of power or a desire for even distribution of power. Status and power are downplayed. Like if Elon Musk walks into the room, we might be starstruck or we might be excited, but in our culture we would probably it's a level playing field. Like Elon Musk got there, and yes, great, success was awesome for him, is awesome for him, and you know what? Here we are. We're in our culture, and if I wanted to be there, then I could work my ass off and do it. I'd work my butt off and do it, right? So that's what that is, low power distance. Now, how high power distance? Let's take like a monarchy. And the monarchy, they accept the unequal power. They understand that the queen or the king or whoever is okay. It's autocratic. They can say what they want. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that power unequal process. Masculine and feminine. This cultural dimension is not about female and male, but more about feminine and masculine, right? Masculine traits, the ambition, achievement, competition, aggressiveness, those type things. Feminine traits, gentleness, nurturance, cooperation. The extent to which the culture values these traits versus the other, right? Masculine traits, they value more gender-specific roles where, maybe the women stay home and clean and take care of the home and take care of the house, and the male will go out and do work and bring home money and whatever. That might be an extreme example, but those are the examples. In Denmark, there is more equal distribution in power. It'll be a lot more accepted to see a stay-at-home dad when you're in Sweden or the Netherlands or Denmark. On the Austrian, Japan, Mexico side, it's not uncommon to hear about the machismo pride that Mexican males are born and surrounded with in their culture. And that machismo, masculinity, it's like the man takes care of the house and the women stay home to take care of the family. And it's still a prevalent thing, right? And like I said, we're not talking right or wrong or whatever. If you disagree with something on these polar ends, chances are you're from the opposite culture, and that's okay, right? So we're all influenced by where we are and what we've done and lived. The next one, long-term, short-term orientation. This is the extent to which members of that culture think about long-term, whether it's history or the future. So deep in the past, deep in the future versus the short-term. Long-term cultures are more patient, more persistent. They save more money. They have more respect for elders. History and future is very intriguing, and they hold their elders with high regard. And the short-term cultures, short-term oriented cultures, instant gratification is the goal. Less desire to save, less respect for elders, less into history, not worried about history repeating itself, just kind of going with it, rolling with the punches. The sixth one is indulgence, restraint. This is the extent to which members of a culture can refrain from doing or getting what is wanted right away or not, right? So a high restraint, they do hold back, they do see external things as sources of happiness. And the high indulgence people, they don't hold back on getting what they want. They are in control of their own life and their own happiness. So we talked about some cultural dimensions that can influence how we interact with others. And the relationship between culture and communication is prevalent when we talk about learning culture in the process of communicating, the how, why, who, what do you do? This is when you're communicating with somebody in a different culture and you're asking these questions so you get an understanding of who and what they are and believe and their values. Communication reflects cultural values, i.e. collectivistic culture and family, low and high context. Being able to see that somebody's from a collectivistic culture, you might be able to understand and connect with them through the understanding that it's important to reach out and be successful or be a part of or help the group as a whole. With that knowledge of collectivistic versus individualistic, you might have a better idea of how one person might handle a situation of whatever's going on. Communication can express and sustain cultures through stories, right? By elders in that culture sharing stories with the younger generation, those stories get passed on and passed on. In conversation, by learning the how, why, what, when, who of the process of communicating, like in the beginning here, but the communication expresses and sustains cultures, meaning cultures can carry on from generation to generation through communication, and communication is the only way that will survive. And so as those stories get handed down and told, handed down and told, handed down and told, it's those stories that keep and maintain that culture. Communication is a source of cultural change. Think of all the social justice type events that have happened and pushed our society towards where it's at now, right? The civil rights, environmental climate change, women's rights, voting rights, gay pride, all of those. Now, how can you adapt your communication to diverse cultures and social communities? Well, you can engage in person-centered communication. This is a play off of uncertainty reduction theory. So don't worry about this, but uncertainty reduction theory is a theory that states that we as people will do whatever we need to do to reduce the uncertainty we feel in situations where we're meeting new people. And how do we do this? Well, when you meet somebody and you're trying to get to know them and I guess feel them out, see if they're someone that you want to hang out with, someone you want to be a friend with, or engage conversation with, what do? You seek out information, you ask questions, you listen, you observe them, you figure out, are these the people that I want to be with, connecting with, etc. That's uncertainty reduction theory. Great theory, a lot into it, but we don't have the time to go into that right now. Adapting our communication to diverse cultures and social communities. Again, by respecting others' feelings and ideas, you're going to be able to communicate more effectively to that person. Try to avoid things like telling that other person that they shouldn't feel a certain way. You should try to avoid talking for someone else when they have the ability to do so. When they have the ability to handle themselves and process information and speak, that it's usually best to let them communicate that. Ethnocentrism, we talked about ethnocentrism and the idea that one culture is superior to another culture. And you want to avoid that. That's not going to be helpful at all in any sort of intercultural communication. And culturally relative. What might be okay in one culture is not okay in another. Say, for instance, there are cultures in the East that do cook and enjoy eating dog meat. Now, here in our culture, we were not raised like that. That's not part of our culture. It's not something we do on an everyday basis. So it might seem weird at first, but by understanding cultural relativity, you can understand somebody that is engaged and likes whatever it is because that's how they were raised. How many young kids do you know that like sushi, right? Well, sushi in America or in American culture might not be the first choice for a young kid or a young child, but maybe it's the first choice for many young children in Japan, right? Where sushi's really prevalent. So cultural relativity, just understanding that others could be different and that's okay. Now, you want to recognize that adapting to cultural diversity is a process, and you're going to go through different phases: resistance and tolerance and understanding, respect, different things like that. First, you're going to feel a resistance to want to accept a diverse culture just because it's different and unique on its face. You'll start to build tolerance for beginning to accept that other culture and start understanding that culture more and why that culture does have those values and beliefs that it does. And you'll begin through conversation and communication to respect that diverse culture, and everything starts feeling good. And then all of a sudden, maybe you'll find yourself, participating in part of that culture, maybe going to a Native American powwow and just being engaged and watching that ceremony and watching everything that's going on. That's participating. And that is a process in how to get more comfortable in intercultural communication situations.